Getting ready, she led me the way. As an Eagles fan, do you like the song Hotel California? Then you might be ready to hear a truth about this famous band that not many people know. One Eagles member has said out loud that they hate Don Henley. I'm still not quite. This feud that doesn't seem to be able to be solved goes beyond heated arguments. They tell a story in the studio about power, money, and betrayal that might make you question everything you thought you knew. Let's get started. When the Eagles manager called Don Felder in 2001, it was a cold call. You're fired. Those few words put a sudden end to his 27-year run with the famous band. It wasn't just a business choice. Felder and Don Henley had been fighting for decades, and this was the peak of their feud. Don Henley and Glenn Frey were behind Felder's firing. That moment not only ended Felder's time with the Eagles, but it also left a wound that never fully healed. She made Henley her worst enemy, seeing him as the ultimate threat. Felder joined the Eagles in 1974 and quickly became an important part of the group. He brought with him the famous guitar riff from Hotel California. His skill and emotional range helped the band create its unique sound, from the dreamy flow of Tequila Sunrise to the raw energy of Life in the Fast Lane. But Felder felt more and more restricted when he wasn't in the spotlight. He wasn't just another band member. He was a big part of what made the Eagles so great. He was still treated like a hired hand by Don Henley and Glenn Frey. Felder wrote in his autobiography Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles, that he was often left out of important choices, like which songs to play on tour and how to split the money made. Tension built up until it blew up when the Eagles got back together after being apart for 14 years. The Hell's Over tour was a huge hit and made the band millions of dollars. Felder quickly learned that his share was a lot less than Henley's and Frey's. The two winners got more than 60% of the money, but Felder only got 17%. Even though he made important contributions to the shows, he started to question how the band worked as he felt more and more wronged. He wanted things to be more fair because he thought he should be treated equally, but Henley, who is known for being tough and unwilling to give in, refused. Henley said that he and Frey were the Eagles' soul, while Felder was just a backup player in a tense meeting. These words hurt Felder's pride and sense of self-worth a lot. Felder made things worse by threatening to sue if the problem wasn't fixed. Henley and Frey didn't try to work things out, they just did it. Felder was fired in February 2001, taking him out of the band he had helped build for decades. He lost more than just his dream job because of what he did. It made him feel cheated. Felder saw Henley as more than just a tough co-worker. He was someone who ruined his track record with the band. For Rolling Stone, Felder said, "I gave this band everything I had, but Don Henley made me feel like I was nothing." The firing was a big story in the music press. News outlets like Billboard and Variety wrote big stories about how one of rock's best bands broke up. Felder's leaving came as a surprise to Eagles fans, whose minds had been made up of his guitar work. But for Felder, it was the start of a legal and personal fight with Henley, who he thought had taken away everything he loved. The War at Studio. The Eagles went into the studio in 1976 to record Hotel California, the album that would make them famous in rock history. As the guitarist, Don Felder played the haunting opening riff. It was a series of notes that became quickly famous and is still heard by millions of people. But behind this masterpiece was a quiet war between Felder and Don Henley. Differences in style would hurt their friendship forever. Felder thought of the riff as his own work of art. He had carefully put it together at home, recorded it on tape, and sent it to the other members. "I played that riff a lot of times until it felt just right." Felder wrote about this in Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles 2008. He said that the band decided to build Hotel California around it. Felder hoped to be able to easily show his style, but Henley, who sang lead and helped produce the album, had a different idea. He worked with Glenn Frey to write the words because he wanted the song to tell a deeper story about how the American dream has fallen apart. Felder felt like he couldn't be creative with this direction. Henley was known for being very picky about details in the studio. He asked Felder to record his guitar parts over and over, changing each note to fit a different sound each time. At one point late at night, Henley stopped recording and told him that the solo wasn't interesting enough. Felder, who had played guitar for a long time, saw this as an insult to him. He told Rolling Stone in 2008, "I felt like a machine, not an artist." Things got really tense when Henley asked Felder to completely change a solo he had worked on for weeks. Felder was so mad that he put his guitar down on the table and stormed out of the studio, leaving the room tense. Henley was in charge of more than just the technical stuff. He changed what the song meant. He and Frey wanted Hotel California to be a metaphor, with images of fancy hotels standing for bad behavior in society. Felder, on the other hand, liked things to be simple and focused on how music made him feel. During one meeting, he offered a shorter version of the song that focused on the guitar to keep people interested. Henley turned down the idea right away, saying that the song had to have a full story. Their fight was about more than music. It was deep and abstract. Felder wanted to be the one who made art. Henley insisted on having full control over the record to make sure it was a masterpiece, but the arguments went beyond Hotel California. Felder often felt like his ideas weren't being taken into account while songs like Victim of Love and The Last Resort were being recorded. He once suggested adding a new riff to the chorus to make it better, but Henley shut it down right away. Most of all, Don Henley didn't want to hear what I had to say. Felder put words in heaven and hell. That anger that wasn't dealt with led to a deep and ongoing grudge that would come out years later, the shocking court case. Don Felder didn't say anything after the Eagles fired him. Instead, he went straight to Don Henley and Glenn Frey by suing them for $50 million, saying he was wrongfully fired and wanting a cut of the band's income. The case was more than just a fight in court. His already tense relationship with Henley turned into a very public fight that got the attention of everyone in the music business. It was the result of nearly 30 years of anger. Felder said that Henley and Frey were taking advantage of the Eagles' money by keeping most of the money they made from records, tours, and merchandise. Court records show that Felder only got about 17% of the profits, while Henley and Frey got more than 60%. This is despite the fact that all three had been important members from the start. I worked hard and gave my all to the Eagles, but they made me feel like I didn't belong. In 2008, Felder wrote a book called Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles. He also said that Henley and Frey had quietly signed contracts to get more financial power, which would have kept him from making important decisions like when to release the collection of songs from 1972 to 1999 and when the band would get back together in 1994. It wasn't just about money that they sued. According to Felder, Henley and Frey tried to hurt his image by saying he was hard to work with and didn't care about the Eagles. Felder told Billboard in 2001, "They wanted me to feel like I didn't belong, but I knew my worth in the band." Henley, on the other hand, fought back hard. He called Felder greedy and insisted that he and Frey earned a bigger share because they did more than just play. They wrote most of the songs, produced the albums, and helped shape the band's identity. In a statement, Henley said, "The Eagles is our dream, and we have the right to protect it." The lawsuit went on for years and became one of the most publicized fights in the music business. The New York Times and Rolling Stone both called it a civil war among rock legends. Legal fees cost millions of dollars, and pressure from the media made things worse. Felder was criticized by some Eagles fans who thought he was destroying the band's legacy. Henley and Frey, on the other hand, stood firm and refused to give in. The legal battle ended in 2007 with an out-of-court settlement whose terms were never made public. Felder and Henley had no relationship left after the lawsuit. If they had had any mutual respect before, it was gone after the case. Felder never mentioned Henley's name again. In an interview with Guitar World in 2012, he said, "I have no regrets about suing. It was the only way I could get justice." Henley, on the other hand, decided not to talk about Felder in public interviews. The case was not only a painful part of Eagles' life, but it also became a lasting reminder of a friendship between artists that could not be fixed. Either smart or a control freak. The Eagles' lead singer and drummer, Don Henley, was not only a great musician but also a stubborn person whose attitude shaped both the band's success and its problems. His drive to be perfect and his ability to make quick decisions helped the Eagles make great songs like Hotel California and The End of the Innocents. People like Don Felder saw him as controlling, cold, and sometimes too much because of those same traits. Henley was known for lovingly taking care of little things, but he did more in the studio than just sing. He was in charge of almost every part of the production, from how the instruments were set up to how good the end sound was. Longtime bandmate Glenn Frey once said of Henley in a 1994 Rolling Stone interview that he was like the band's cop, always making sure everything was up to par. His songs were more than just music to him. It was really beautiful. He worked on the words for hours to make sure they had meaning and depth. As heard in the song The Last Resort, which criticizes the loss of culture and the environment. This commitment helped the Eagles go from being just a rock band to an important part of culture. Henley was always trying to be perfect, which made his friends feel like they were stuck between heaven and hell. This is My Life in the Eagles, 2008. Felder said that he was someone who always needed to have things his way. He talked about times when Henley didn't agree with other people, especially when they disagreed with his plans for the band. Felder once suggested that Henley change the pace of a song to make it more upbeat, but Henley told Felder that it would destroy the soul of the track. These times made Felder feel like his work wasn't valuable, like it wasn't appreciated. Henley also liked to show that he had control over the Eagles' choices. He and Frey were in charge of more than just the artistic side. They planned the business strategy and chose which songs to put out and how to share the money they made. Even though this type of leadership worked, it made things more difficult between them and the other members. In an interview with Guitar World in 2012, Felder told Heidelberg, "Henley is a genius, but he doesn't know how to make others feel appreciated." Henley's toughness didn't mean he was smart. Every part of the band had to be controlled. Not only with the Eagles, Henley wasn't afraid to deal with problems outside of his band. He spoke out against the music business in public, even going to court with David Geffen over the rights to the band's early records. He also didn't hide his political views.
He often backed the Democratic Party and criticized conservative policies, which some people saw as cocky. But those who back him say that his strong beliefs helped him keep the Eagles' legacy alive even though he was under a lot of pressure from business interests. One of my old co-worker quoted in full, "It was said in the untold story of the Eagles 1998 that Henley is the guy you want when things fall apart, but not someone you want to argue with." Felder thought that Henley's personality was the main reason their relationship ended. Henley's need to be perfect and the way he led the Eagles to victory were important, but they made Felder feel limited and ignored. He thought Henley was more than just a great musician. He was someone who was ready to put his ego ahead of friendship and working together. Not just Felder being unhappy. There were other people besides Don Felder who felt suffocated when Don Henley and Glenn Frey were in charge. A lot of other Eagles members also had problems, which showed that the group's culture was tense and that egos and artistic goals often met. Bernie Leon was the Eagles' first guitarist, joining them in 1971. He gave hits like Witchy Woman and Peaceful Easy Feeling, their unique country rock sound. By 1975, when the band's record One of These Nights showed a move toward a more complex rock style, Leon felt like he didn't fit in. He wanted to keep the quality of being real and earthy. Henley cared more about complex tunes and deeper social messages. Things got tense when Leon co-wrote I Wish You Peace with Ronald Reagan's daughter Patty Davis. Henley, who backed Democrats, said the song was too emotional and only reluctantly agreed to record it, which made Leon feel bad. Based on the 1998 book To the Limit, The Untold Story of the Eagles. At the end of 1975, Leon quit the band and left a note saying that Henley was becoming too much for him to handle. Randy Meisner, who sang on Take It to the Limit and was the bassist, also got unhappy. While Hotel California 1976 was being recorded, Meisner wanted to write more songs, but Henley put more emphasis on songs he and Frey wrote together. I felt like I was just singing in the background. In 1981, Meisner told Billboard, the stress of long tours and a lack of recognition slowly wore him out. Meisner left the Eagles in 1977 after a fight with Henley over not wanting to play Take It to the Limit. He didn't say anything bad about Henley in public, but it seemed like the band's setting was too rough for him. These fights show that the Eagles' problems were not just limited to Don Felder. With their clear ideas, Henley and Frey built a legendary band, but many of their peers felt overshadowed, leaving behind a legacy that is both grand and deeply broken, left behind after the wars. Not only did Don Felder's firing in 2001 and his ongoing feud with Don Henley change the Eagles' music, but they also changed how fans and reviewers saw the band. Felder left the Eagles, but they kept going with new players, like guitarist Stuart Smith, who filled in for Felder on tours. Henley and Glenn Frey led the band on tours that were huge hits and drew millions of fans from all over the world. But a lot of Eagles fans who had been with them for a long time thought they had lost some of their soul from their best years. Songs like Hotel California and One of These Nights couldn't have been the same without Felder's emotionally charged and perfectly flawless guitar work. One writer wrote in 2013 for Ultimate Classic Rock, "The Eagles are still great, but they're not as sharp as when Felder was on stage." Long Road Out of Eden, 1987. The band's first big project after Felder left, got mixed reviews. Some people thought that the record was too old-fashioned and dull, even though songs like No More Cloudy Days stood out. Felder, on the other hand, refused to let being fired define his success. He kept playing solo, and in live he often played Eagles hits like Hotel California. He also wrote a biography called Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles 2008, in which he talked about the unfair things that happened to him while Henley was in charge. That book became very important for not only understanding Felder, but also learning more about how the Eagles worked. Felder told Guitar World in 2012, "I don't need the Eagles to prove my worth, but I won't let them erase what I contributed." Felder was successful as a solo artist, but he always said no to getting back together with Henley, saying, "I won't go back to a place that hurt me." This was a bigger loss for the Eagles in 2016 when Glenn Frey got sick and died. Henley said the band would not keep the same name, but he later changed his mind and brought in Vince Gill and Deacon Frey, Glenn's son, to keep going. Even though the Eagles still had big crowds at their performances, it became clear that they were not the legendary band from the 1970s. The Eagles had become a symbol of both success and breakup because of the fight between Felder and Henley and the departure of other important members. The nasty fight between Don Felder and Don Henley showed the evil side of the Eagles' superstardom. Because of Henley's skill and drive, the band reached famous heights, but Felder and others felt left out. This isn't just a story about personal problems. A strong example of what it costs to be creative and in charge in the music business. Is Henley smart or a control freak? Drop your ideas in the box below. If you want to read more stories about rock stars, don't forget to like and follow. Have a nice day and we'll see you soon.